Hello, welcome back to Book Readings for Life is Magic. I left off in the middle of chapter one for the first book reading. This is number two, and here we go. Gonna get right into it. My microphone is right behind Jesus here. For those who lived through it, you know that by the summer of 2020, the global the global COVID-19 viral pandemic was in full force. It was a period of great political and social turmoil in the United States and around the globe, to say the least. A once in a hundred years seismic event which affected all of humanity and left few unchanged. Astrologically, a rare alignment of planets at the beginning of the year seemed to signal the forthcoming chaos. The first conjunction of Mercury, Saturn, and Pluto in the sign of Capricorn since 1972, when the United States was initially formed. The beginning of the conjuncture occurred at exactly high noon in the northeastern United States on January 12, 2020, a date which is also expressed as 0112/20. So again, 01/12/20. Numerically, the date has an interesting circular quality, with each digit in duplicate and the pattern repeating endlessly if you start again at the top each time you reach the end, as in 01, 12, 20, 01, 12, 20, etc. Many intuitives and numerologists cite repetitive numbers as evidence of synchronicity, as when one might repeatedly notice 11:11 as the time of day, drawing your attention. Naturally, I noticed 11:11 p.m. on my phone on the evening that I wrote this part of the chapter. Some attribute meaning to these redundant digits, just as an astrologer would point to a demonstrable energetic effect and to the collective gravitational and magnetic pull of planets when aligned in the same orbital degree, as when Pluto, Saturn, and as with Pluto, Saturn, and Mercury on 011220. So right at the beginning of 2020. This is mysterious, and I don't fully understand it, but feel there is something real to these synchronicities in our gear-like and magical universe. With a heads up from my online psychic friends network, I waited for 011220, otherwise known as January 12, 2020, to arrive with much anticipation. I wondered if it might help lead to the fall of the 45th President of the United States, whom I viewed as a corrupt actor intent on retaining political power at all costs, including sabotaging the world's most successful democracy as it celebrated its Pluto return. Mom and I went out to lunch that day and stood outside at noon after leaving Betty's restaurant in the Allentown district of Buffalo, where I live. We didn't feel anything peculiar or different. Little did we know it would be our last in-person lunch together in public for more than a year once the COVID-19 virus spread like an inferno after its initial eruption in China. Further regarding synchronicity, consider that 011220, January 12th, 2020, later turned out to be the very day that COVID-19 was first DNA sequenced. So, within a few minutes of the rare 011220, January 12th, 2020, conjunction of Pluto, Saturn, and Mercury in the sign of Capricorn, the world was essentially brought to a standstill. That cannot possibly be a coincidence. So the first day, the day that COVID was DNA sequenced was 011220. That was the first time it was DNA sequenced, even though it was initially erupted in 2019, thus is called COVID-19. Tongue-tied. COVID-19 is cited by many as the biggest reason that the 45th president was not reelected to a second term in office in fall 2020, and I believe it. Many in the psychic community, including myself, regarded COVID-19 as absolutely fated, as if Spirit knew that the only way to dislodge 45, I rarely say his name, and his corrupt accomplices was by means of a catastrophic event which ultimately led to his exposure as a fraud. In that regard, it might be said that God and Spirit know how to play hardball. If COVID 19 is indeed a manifestation of we, the collective, and the divine, then the associated human cost has been very high, but it may very well have been necessary to prevent the United States from slipping into autocracy. And if the USA had fallen, so too might all of the globe. Again, remember that when Pluto, Mercury, and Saturn aligned in the sign of Capricorn on 01/12/20, it was for the first time in 248 years. It was as if the energies which were present during the foundation of the United States had returned along with it, seeking resolution, with events from history stamped upon a spinning wheel. Notably, the establishment of the United States was made possible in part by displacing Native Americans from their homes and mass black slave labor. Excuse me. In 1772, there were approximately 240,000 American settlers, along with 60,000 African slaves, or 20% of the total population. Though the American Declaration of Independence and Constitution were highly aspirational in terms of personal freedoms and beliefs, that precious gift was not shared by all who lived here then. And so, astrologically and karmically speaking, it was probably inevitable that what was pushed down into the shadows for so long would inevitably demand redress, unearthed from deep ground by Pluto, the great digger and disruptor, bringing things up literally from the underworld, and made manifest by Saturn. Some people also regarded the emergence of COVID-19 and the general global chaos of 2020 as the beginning of the end times. In belief systems like Hinduism, Kali Yuga, which is spelled Kali, capital Yuga, was purported to be in effect, representing the somewhat violent death, perhaps more spiritually than literally, of one era and the beginning of a brand new cycle of tremendous human growth and possibility in the face of social adversity and environmental change. And then a few years hence, the literal dawning of the age of Aquarius, a period of supposed great enlightenment and connectivity with spirit, beginning somewhere around 2023 to 2025. Astrologers seem to have somewhat varied opinions on when Aquarius begins or whether it has already begun, but the general consensus is that it is near. Being able to enjoy the summer of 2020 outdoors was a blessing and sanctuary from the disorienting effects of having to isolate from one another all spring as the invisible COVID-19 virus stalked the world. My brother Steve said it all seemed surreal, and I agreed. My emotions were on a roller coaster, just like everyone else's. Some days it really felt like the world was ending, but I was buoyed greatly by the emerging community of psychic political readers and their growing audiences on YouTube, the online video platform. The readers provided great insight about what was likely to happen in the near future, including the eventual victory of President Joseph R. Biden in 2020 and the relatively speedy development of new vaccines to help combat the pandemic. One popular psychic medium named Linda Grindell, whose channel is called Linda G, the Comanche Psychic, accurately predicted Biden's election as well as the somewhat unlikely victory of Georgia Democrats in 2 runoff elections to capture the Senate. She credited her spirit guides as guaranteeing the result, even when things looked very uncertain. Amazingly, Linda G also had a vision, via her guides, in which she saw the outbreak of COVID-19 about 6 months prior to its arrival. And she shared this information in a YouTube video, which is time-stamped as evidence. Linda's guides showed her COVID was to begin overseas and that people would wind up in surgical masks, but she didn't realize how serious and widespread the pandemic would quickly become. It was more like a quick vision, a deadly preview whose significance wasn't fully realized until later. My family and I kept our distance throughout the spring. I don't think we even considered gathering with masks on until summer. My primary companion was my beautiful cat, Gabe. I got a lot of writing done at the start of COVID before the mundane dread crept in. I made a few attempts at dating in summer 2020, but it was definitely not normal. Meeting outdoors was the only relatively safe method. When I met Michelle, our ease in each other's company was another great comfort during chaotic times. We spent many gorgeous summer evenings at the Buffalo Harbor and on my second floor porch where we stargazed together. A fantastic mobile phone app called Star Tracker became our go to source each nightscape. We spotted Jupiter and Saturn in the sky together many evenings as they approached their own 20-year conjunction later that summer, and we knew that Pluto traveled unseen, viewable only with a telescope, at a great distance between them. At the end of the season, we saw Mars more regularly too, noting its distinctly more orange glow versus the bright light yellow of Jupiter. This reconnection with nature was predicted by many psychics as part of COVID 19's disruptive yet intended effect. It was the upside of the pandemic, as most of us re examined what was really of value in life. One night, as we sat on my porch drinking beer and wine, Michelle pointed to a star directly over the top of my house and the entire area, like the highest part of the dome. "Which one is that?" she asked. I pulled out Star Tracker to identify it, pointing my phone towards the sky. The star was Vega, Vega, one of five in the constellation of Lyra, otherwise known as the Harp! Exclamation point. I had no idea there was a harp constellation until that moment. I suddenly thought about angels standing upon the sea of glass and fire in the book of Revelations, repelling the forces of darkness with the powerful vibrations of their beautiful music upon the strings of their harps. And gazing through the base of Lyra's harp strings, as graphically represented in Star Tracker, was the Ring Nebula, also named Messier 57, which resembled a giant eyeball and pupil, like God peering from heaven on us all below. As we marveled at the discovery, we also learned that Lyra happens to sit between two bird-themed constellations, Cygnus the swan and Aquila the eagle, which carried Zeus/Jupiter's thunderbolts in Greek-Roman mythology, and also directly adjacent Hercules, the Hercules constellation, who represents strength. In tarot, when you draw the star card, the star is over you, meaning it is your time to shine. Vega and Lyra were directly above Michelle and I that day, like the star card. I told Michelle about the passages in Revelations, which I read about in the first installment of the book readings. I told Michelle about the passages in Revelations and how angelic forces defeat darkness with beautiful songs played on cosmic harps during the showdown on the sea of glass and fire, and how funny it was to be referencing the Bible when I didn't really believe in it. Or rather, I didn't take it as whole truth, and still don't, though I acknowledge some of it was almost certainly inspired and prophetic. Revelations felt very relevant. The entire year had a biblical quality, as if someone had written it into existence rather than it being real. COVID-19 brought the word to a virtual standstill. It was too odd to be real, wasn't it? Yet we lived through the surreality, as my brother Steve noted, and we struggled with chaos. It isn't quite over yet. And we also looked to the light and hoped that prayers to Spirit and God could be heard and answered. Let us help play the harps that bring the love and healing to the world. Let us be the light workers who contribute to the continuation of mankind's adventures and evolution on earth and the spiritual journeys of billions of souls. Let us win because our cause is just, and we operate from empathy, hope, love, and trust. Lyra the harp remained above us in the northeastern United States all through that gorgeous and temperate summer. Sadly, other parts of the world experienced some of the worst weather known to the planet. Massive wildfires in California burned thousands of square miles of forest. Hurricanes pummeled the Gulf Coast. COVID 19 tore through the population with no apparent end yet in sight. Biblical prophecies seemed to have some merit, yet we had to believe in a better future. Lyra was another important sign that we were not alone. We wanted so much to believe it was so. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 1. Excuse me. Now I will start chapter 2. Not sure if I'll get through all of chapter 2 because I don't want this to be too long. Let's see how long it is. Okay, there's a couple of places I could break. All right, so chapter 2 is called Love's the Sound, or Love is the Sound, which is also the name of a song I wrote many years ago. As a lifelong student in love with music, which is kind of my religion, I'm happy that beautiful high vibrational cosmic songs performed on celestial harps play a metaphorical or literal role in either the defeat of evil by good on the sea of glass and fire, and or the joyful celebration which follows this ultimate victory. Is the song the angels play so noble and pure that the sound waves incapacitate those of ill intention or render their schemes useless? Wouldn't it be nice if that was enough? I've been obsessed with music since high school when I began singing, playing guitar, and writing songs, and was passionate but terrible. Late bloomer. I remain fascinated by the emotional qualities of sound, no doubt about that. Music can have a powerful, uplifting, spiritual aspect when it comes from an honest place, and I'd argue that the intent behind the music and the honesty, or lack thereof, is always felt by the audience. The sound waves that constitute music enter the body and are partly absorbed in the muscles, bones, and organs, but our soul feels it too, as a resonant frequency. And when music speaks to us, we vibrate higher and are uplifted by it. We're absolutely physically and spiritually affected by sound every time we encounter it, which is all the time in a loud world. We also know that all matter in the universe is made up of energy, which vibrates at varying frequencies. Matter, too, is vibrational in nature. When we really get down to it, everything we know of is waves, not just sound. Correspondingly, psychics and mediums apparently raise their personal vibration in order to communicate with spirits in heaven, the other side, which coexists with this reality, overlaid in the same space, but at a higher vibration or perhaps a different dimension, which most of us can't perceive. In an article I came across a few years ago on bigthink.com, physicist Mikio Kaku, I don't know if I'm saying that pronouncing that correctly, but it's spelled Michio is his first name. Kaku, Kaku is his last name. Michio Kaku. Start that sentence again. In an article I came across a few years ago on bigthink.com, physicist Michio Kaku makes the case for a symphonic universe. It's the quantum physics / string theory version of reality as a musical instrument. Quote, the subatomic particles we see in nature, the quarks, the electrons, are nothing but musical notes on a tiny vibrating string, he says. Physics is nothing but the laws of harmony that you can write on vibrating strings. Chemistry is nothing but the melodies you can play on interacting vibrating strings. The universe is a symphony of vibrating strings. And then he goes on. And what is the mind of God that Albert Einstein eloquently wrote about for the last 30 years of his life? For the first time in history, we have a candidate. We are nothing but melodies. We are nothing but cosmic music played out on vibrating strings and membranes. Obeying the laws of physics, which is nothing but the laws of harmony, of vibrating strings. It is cosmic music resonating through 11-dimensional hyperspace, which I don't fully understand, by the way. Just because it's in here doesn't mean I fully understand what he means by 11-dimensional hyperspace. Kaku believes that the universe is a musical instrument whose strings resonate in harmony to create reality. If this is starting to sound a little less like science and more like mysticism, it's no accident. This is where science and magic meet and peacefully coexist, in my view. Some scientists would say that's not science at all, and in a way they're right because it's more than science. But I highly doubt they'll be able to crack the secrets of how the universe works and continues to exist unless they can make a leap of faith which incorporates the mystical alongside the mathematical. You can't get there on logic alone. Pythagoras also envisioned the cosmos as musical and mathematical in nature 2,500 years ago, laid out orderly like the 12 notes of the chromatic musical scale, which he also conceived. Dubbed the father of music theory, he married the machinations of the universe to song in his quote-unquote music of the spheres, kind of like the creator/God's guitar with God tuning the strings. 12-month calendar, 12-note scale. I'll likely never comprehend 11-dimensional hyperspace or how Pythagoras sussed out the 12-note scale, but I could definitely get on board with the universe as a big guitar. I'm also good with the reality that that's both a mathematically complex matrix of physical laws and the ultimate art project by a maker who is a consummate scientist and creative artist and who exists without disharmony while incorporating contradiction. And in personal terms, we align with the universe's harmonious construct and help to keep it properly tuned when acting from the best version of ourselves. You feel it head to toe. It makes your cells ring and sing in approval when you do the right thing. And there's a little break within the chapter to indicate a new thought. Pardon me. I'm tangentially reminded of a dream I had a few years ago in which someone showed me the existence of other dimensions. This unknown person also told me that all living beings are connected to each other through the dimensions by invisible strings. He held up his arm and showed me the line between the two of us. Tug on someone's string at any distance and they will feel it, he said, especially if their mind is open and clear. I believe the strings are real, and in the few years since my dream, I came across a psychic named Cindy, a soul print intuitive, who claims that we are indeed connected to the ones we love by golden heart ribbons. More on that to come. Another related aside, trippy comic book writer Grant Morrison put a nice spin on Michio Kaku's symphonic reality when he had Superman, the comic book character, fix the damaged universe by literally singing it back into tune in the story Final Crisis. Morrison's writing is often unconventional and metaphysical. He is also claimed to have had supernatural experiences. It occurred to me that a devil's enterprise would be to fill the world with cacophonous noise, seemingly endless expressions of frustration, jealousy, anger, lies, and nonsense, which detune the strings that hold reality together in beauty and harmony. Shards of bitterness flying through the air, digital mobs brandishing linguistic pitchforks. If a devil fills the universe with noise, then it will be harder for honest individual voices to be heard. The honest voices are also less likely to draw attention to themselves or make a fuss because they're inherently humble. What to do? What to do to fight for good? Persist. Stand in one's truth. Be quiet and brave in the face of darkness. Know that spirit naturally supports that which is light, loving, and empathetic. In the long run, good always triumphs, no matter how long it takes. And then there's yet another chapter break indicating a new thought. So let's see how much more we have to go. There's a couple more little chapter breaks in here as it goes. Okay, see how far I get. A little bit more. More about sound. About 10 years ago, when I was living on West Utica Street in downtown Buffalo, New York, USA, during a period of heavy spiritual traffic, I began hearing unfamiliar orchestral compositions while drifting off to sleep. It happened a bunch of times. The strings were usually in the foreground playing a melody. Some of the music was intricate and fast changing, sometimes more seemingly sorry. Some of the music was intricate and fast changing, seemingly more complex than I would be able to write myself. Sometimes I grabbed my smartphone to hum little bits into its microphone, but as there were multiple harmonic layers and it was already nebulous on the edge of dreams, the effort to capture the sounds in some way would often make it dissipate. It's hard to nail down a dream while you're still inside it. I tried to write a song from one of these midnight melodies, but it didn't really come off, though it reminded me of an interview in which Paul McCartney described coming up with the melody of the song yesterday as if from a dream. It was so quick and easy and fully formed that he wondered if he had stolen it from someone else by accident. Was yesterday somehow gifted to McCartney by the musical universe because he possessed the correct receiver within, plus the requisite musical skill to recognize its beauty and bring it to fruition? Perhaps then it was just a matter of transcription or a collaboration with spirit. Where do song ideas really come from, anyways? From inside of us or outside of us, or both? I lean towards both. I think many talented artists create work by connecting to the underlying creative intelligence holding everything together. It feels true in my own better songs and prose. McCartney recently commented that melodies came so naturally to him that they feel like they're from outside. Italian film director Federico Fellini, another favorite artist of mine, described his process in a similar way, that he was just a vessel for ideas outside of himself. And as mentioned, film director David Lynch uses a meditative state as a means of attracting concepts too. So perhaps his dreamlike imagery resonates because we are all dreams and dreamers, and maybe someday God will wake up and we won't be here anymore. That's just a joke, I hope. Well, even if we are essentially residing inside a dream, it seems to be a fairly long and stable one given the apparent length of our agreed upon recorded history. Or maybe we're collaborative, collective dreamers living inside our own dreams, a concept which David Lynch has also explored in his work. TV writer Ronald D. Moore also explored the idea of universal music in his daring, imaginative 2003 sci-fi TV series Battlestar Galactica. On the other side of the galaxy, thousands of years ago, a group of artificial human beings called Cylons lived among flesh and blood humans, and for decades believed that they were human too. Then they inexplicably began to hear the Jimi Hendrix song All Along the Watchtower in their heads while traveling through deep space, as if suddenly and involuntarily summoned and dialed into universal radio. The song acted like a beacon and a switch, triggering their true memories and calling them to the planet of their origin, which happened to be Earth. The Cylons then discovered that they are digital copies of people who lived and died millennia ago and who invented them as artificial doppelgangers to preserve their consciousness. So in a sense, in this fictional world, in Battlestar Galactica, all along the Watchtower always existed, and like Paul McCartney and Yesterday, the song, receptive individuals can access the song by dialing into the correct cosmic station. Trippy. It is trippy. Okay, another little within chapter break. 29 minutes. Okay. All right, got a little more to go here. About 8 years ago, when I finished writing the first book, I ran into my friend Allison at a local dive bar on Essex Street. As part of the Rust Belt, Buffalo, New York knows how to drink. So she asked what was new, and I told her about some of the wacky metaphysical stuff in the book. Allison then told me that her sister Melissa and her husband were sitting in bed one morning when they heard a burst of music from inside their bedroom. I immediately thought of the orchestral music I've heard at bedtime many times. It wasn't a radio or from outdoors, it was physically close. It lasted just a second or two, but they looked at each other in wonder, confirming they'd both heard it, though they had no explanation. It was like a little cosmic portal or wormhole had opened and then closed. Cosmic radio behaves unpredictably sometimes. Perhaps it even depends how the planets are lined up on a given day for proper signal relay. Ha ha. Who truly knows? I was unsurprised and told her about my sound experiences. I hadn't heard music in the air for several years since living on West Utica Street, but shortly after talking to Allison about her sister's experience, I woke up mid morning to the sound of a saxophone playing 5 notes in sequence, a quick, distinct melody, and then silence. I sang the notes back to myself. My bedroom is very small. There was no mistaking it as being outdoors given the proximity. It felt very synchronistic, a confirmation that my recent conversation with Allison and thoughts on the subject were correct. That evening, things intensified. I dreamt a more involved saxophone line, lengthier. When I woke, I could hear it perfectly and sing the 11-note melody over 4 bars of music into my phone, and then figured out the harmony I'd heard. The melody wasn't remarkable, but it was distinct. It's no rival for Yesterday, the song, but if I keep hearing fresh melodies on a regular basis at the edge of sleep, perhaps sooner or later there may be a free hit song in there somewhere. Now, this isn't in the book, but since that time, and more recently, I did have a dream that I collaborated on a song with the deceased rock musician Prince, and when I woke up, I could remember the whole chorus, words, melody, and all, and I am, in fact, writing the rest of the song around it. So this has evolved since the time I wrote the book, which is kind of neat. That same evening, before going back to bed, I scribbled the following thoughts, attempting to connect the idea of vibrations, sound waves, and universal music like Michio Kaku. So here's what I wrote. Love is the most powerful positive vibration. It's all the strings of the universe played in perfect tune at once, the entire symphony of creation united in kind and noble purpose. It is free of all greed, jealousy, fear, and weakness. It is perfection and the essence of God. The sound shatters blackness. It is the purpose of existence. Love is an unlikely feeling in a difficult world, and any world or universe in which living beings are free to choose their path will be much the same. But it's the most obvious and fundamental choice. Some people are love. That's all in caps, are love. Effortlessly, easily, unhesitatingly, like my brother and mother. They will be the first at the proverbial gates, and we should be so lucky as to be in their presence in this world and the next. I titled the note that I wrote, Love Wins. And funny enough, the song, not in the book, the song that I'm writing that I dreamt about with Prince is called All Love, and the lyrics that I heard in the melody, the lyrics that I heard in the dream that are the melody are, I don't want no one to give me all of their nothing. I just want someone to give me all of their love. I don't want no one to give me all of their nothing. I just want someone to give me all of their love. That's it in the key of E, I believe. Or is it? Is it the key of E? I think so. If I had my guitar, I could tell you for sure. Okay, so about 10 years ago, I had another musical dream with a clear vocal melody, though the lyrics weren't discernible. Then the midnight bursts of music receded again, though I consciously wrote and recorded other new songs in my normal manner, which likely still involves dipping into the mysterious infinite river of consciousness and ideas. Naturally, after finishing the draft of this chapter, I heard an unfamiliar piece of music while drifting off to nap on the living room couch in the early July heat. But it wasn't orchestral like previous songs. It was an upbeat pop tune with drums and guitars, maybe even Beatlesque. I smiled as it wandered in, then blissfully fell asleep facing the electric fan. Okay, so there is still a little bit left in this chapter, but I'm going to stop here for length and pick it up next time. So thanks once more for tuning in to Book Readings from Life is Magic. I'll put the information in the notes section below about how you can pick up a copy of the book if you would like, or if you prefer, you can just keep listening to these free readings, which I'll try to do as often as I can. So thanks very much for tuning in. Hope all is well. Take care. See you soon.